Hello, this is Ms. Schrader. Today we are going to be discussing the lost colony of Roanoke. My students, you will need a piece of paper with which to take your notes. When you're done, remember you are writing me 5 sentences about what you found interesting, important. When you are done with that, remember you want to make sure you have a strong introductory statement. I think the colony of Roanoke is important because of this. All right, here is your fact sheet. The English colony of Roanoke was founded on Roanoke Island off of present-day North Carolina in 1587. It was founded with 117 men, women, and children. Most colonies in those days were exclusively men, so this was different. The plan was to grow crops and to make glass to sell to England. On August 18th, 1587, the first English child born in North America was born at Roanoke. Her name was Virginia Dare. She was named for Virginia, which is the colony that they were in. She was the daughter of Ananias Dare and Eleanor White Dare. Eleanor's father, John White, was the governor of the colony. John White was an explorer, artist, and cartographer. Remember, cartographers are map makers, as well as the governor of Roanoke Island. Not long after Virginia's birth, the colonists realized they didn't have enough food. John White returned to England and was prevented from returning to the colony by the war with Spain. He wasn't able to come back for 3 years. In 1590, when he returned, all the colonists were gone. They had built a fort that was not there before, but there were no dead bodies, no sign of any kind of a war. When they went there, he had one of the men with him play a flute, play a traditional English folk song, in hopes that if people were hiding nearby, they would come out, but they did not do so. They found the word Croatoan carved into a tree. The Croatoans were Indians that lived on the mainland, so they went there and spoke to them, investigated various different things, went pretty far out trying to find what happened to the colonists. They were not successful. Eventually, John White had to return to England. He is believed to have died in 1593. His last known letter that he wrote to someone, he said, "I am sure that Eleanor and Virginia are still alive." But in reality, we really don't know what happened to them. Here we have a modern map which shows the location of Roanoke, and further north it shows Jamestown Colony. Jamestown was founded about 15 years later. It was the first successful English colony. Roanoke obviously was unsuccessful since everybody disappeared. This is a map from closer to the time period. It shows you that Roanoke is an island. It is off the coast of North Carolina. In this particular map, you can see a ship coming towards it. Actually, the community was founded on the western side of the island in order to protect it. This is a picture of John White. He was the governor of the colony. Remember, he was the one who also went back to England to get them supplies and was unable to do so because of a war with Spain. You also need to remember that he is the grandfather of the first English child born in North America, Virginia Dare. His daughter, Eleanor, was the child's mother. John White was a famous artist. He did a lot of portraits in England. And when he came to America, one of his jobs was to do a lot of drawings of the things in the natural world that they saw. So we have here a very lovely picture of an eagle that he did. There are a lot of pictures that he did of Native Americans. And so he's really quite famous as an artist of the early European time in America. This is a picture showing the baptism of Virginia Dare. This picture was done, I believe, in the early 20th century, so definitely not from the time period. The man standing towards the center with the red stockings on, that is John White there. Standing next to him is his daughter, Eleanor. And the man who appears to have his arm like on Eleanor's shoulder is her husband, Ananias Dare. And the county, by the way, in which Roanoke is currently placed is called Dare County for the Dare family. So John White leaves. He goes back to England to get food. He is stuck there for 3 years. When he returns, he and his men get off the ship and they start wandering around. And as they come to the colony where people are living, they notice that they have put a wooden fencing, a wall around the colony as if as a source for protection. Thinking that perhaps the people had hidden in the forest somewhere because they didn't know who they were, John White had one of his sailors play on the flute a traditional English song, hoping to coax the colonists out, and he was unsuccessful. There was no one there. As they wander around, still not finding the colonists, into a tree they find the words carved Croatoan, and Croatoan was the name of a Native American tribe on the mainland of North Carolina. And so they went to meet with the representatives of that tribe, trying to find out what had become of the settlers. They talked to various different people and got various different answers. Yes, some of them came over. They went with some of our group to the south. No, none of them came over. We don't know what happened to them. And so they get a variety of different stories. Another thing I want you to make sure you understand is that they didn't find any dead bodies. They didn't find any suggestion of violence of any kind. The people simply weren't there. In time, White had no choice but to give it up, go home to England. He eventually settled in Ireland. He appears to have died about 3 years later in 1593. The last letter that we have written by him is from that year. He's writing to a friend saying, I'm certain that my daughter Eleanor and my granddaughter Virginia are still alive. I know this in my heart. There are four main theories on what happened to the colonists. The first one is that perhaps reaching desperate points for food, unable to trade with the Indians, they may have built a ship, tried to sail back home themselves. In some sort of a storm, the ship sank, and all were lost. There would be no evidence to prove this. The second theory is that they did go and join up with some of the Croatoan Indians. There were a lot of different branches of them. They may have joined up with a group that left the area. DNA testing has actually been done with descendants of the Croatoans to see if they can find European blood there. And while they have been finding it, that doesn't necessarily prove that the Roanoke colony are the ones who are their ancestors. It's a possibility, and at the moment, it hasn't been proven. The third theory is that they may have been captured, killed, taken away by the Powhatan Indians, who were another very powerful local tribe. The picture you're seeing is a picture of Chief Powhatan. He becomes famous later. He is the father of Pocahontas, and that deals with Jamestown colony, so several years later. Once again, there's no particular evidence to back this up. The fourth idea is that they may have been attacked by the Spanish, who also had colonies in the area and didn't like the idea of the English having colonies there. Once again, the lack of bloodshed in the area suggests that that probably isn't true. Over the years, there have been archaeological digs, there have been research into the records of various different people to try and find out what happened to them. Still not really known. In 1937, a man brought a stone to Roanoke University in Georgia, and it seemed to have writing on it. And the writing seemed to say, Aeneas Dare plus Virginia went hence to heaven. Any Englishman show John White, governor of Virginia. On the back, there is a lengthy, detailed description of them being seized by Indians, taken away, and things like that. Roanoke College or University, advertised, said, hey, anybody else finding any stones that have this sort of writing on them, bring them to us, we will pay you for them. Well, you know what happened. They received about 40 stones that they paid for. Most of them were proven very quickly to be fraudulent, modern things that were made. But today they actually think that the first one may have been genuine, and they're not sure. It is kept secure in the dean of the university's office. And this could be the solution that, yes, they were captured by Indians, taken with them, and so a lot of them died along the way. At the end of the Civil War, Roanoke Island became the home of a freedmen's society. Um, Families of freed African slaves moved there to live together, to take care of one another, and to survive, grow crops, and things like that. They weren't very successful. There seemed to have been a lot of diseases there, and within about 10 years, they decided to call it quits and left the area. Today on Roanoke Island, they have a modern version of the fort. They have a festival park, a maritime museum, an aquarium. They still do archaeological work. Frequently, after hurricanes, the hurricanes will turn up the soil and the sand, and they will do research, and they have found some things, but they haven't found anything conclusive to tell them what happened. And among other things, it has this sign that marks that it is the birth of America's first English child, Virginia Dare. And of course, we have no idea what happened to Virginia or any of the people who were there. My students, you are giving me 5 sentences about what you have learned about Roanoke Island. You are going to be giving me a strong introductory statement. Hey, feel free to tell me what you think happened to them. And for everybody else, I hope you found it educational and interesting and enjoyable. Thank you.